Wish to call to order of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for our January 9th meeting. It's good to see each and every one of you here this evening. At this time, I'm going to ask Chairman Jeff Phillips to have our prayer and pledge. Would you please stand?
Bow with me, please. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we're so thankful for this day. We're thankful for the blessings of life and the opportunity we have to join you in an abundant life. God, be with this commission as we do the business of the county. Give us the insight to do what is in the best interest of all of our citizens. Be with our staff, be with our chairman as they present all of the things that we need to be discussing tonight. We ask that you be with those that are in our community, that are suffering, those that are ill, and I pray that you meet the needs and the lives of those citizens. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to Thank you, Chairman Phillips. We now will have the roll call. Madam Secretary, we'll do a roll call and determination of quorum.
Jim Averwater. Jeff Phillips. Present. Mike Cush.
Present.
Lee Bogle. Here. Charlotte P. Craig Gooch. Here. David Jones. Here. Chip Pinion. Marvin Whitworth.
Here.
Jim Thompson. Here. Pettis Reed.
Here.
Have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Next item is approval of minutes, but we don't have any minutes tonight, so we'll move on to that one and do that next meeting, I would say. Items withdrawn and deferred. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did want to let the commission know that the first application on the agenda by Charlie Mitchell, this is for 3960 Shelbyville Pike, rezoning from RM to a planned development for a townhome project, has been taken off the agenda. That happened this morning. If there's anybody here who wanted to speak for that, it will not be considered tonight. I apologize, but with that kind of short notice, there was no way to let folks know. We did let Commissioner Beverly know about it. I talked to him earlier, and I know he tried to make some calls. So, but if anyone's here for that, I just wanted to let you know we will not be considering that one.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move right into our business in item 6. Item 1 has been withdrawn. Just to remind everyone that all rezoning requests will be considered at the February 16th Board of Commissioners meeting unless deferred or withdrawn at this Planning Commission. We'll begin with item 2, GC Central Valley LLC, REZ 23001. The location is on Lebanon Pike, Central Valley Road. Commissioner is District 14, Wayne Irwin. Size of the site is approximately 36.7 acres. Tax map 47, parcel 6703, 67 and 12. Existing zoning is planned unit development, PUD, for a mixed-use project. Proposed zoning is a PUD amendment. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. This rezoning request for what's called the crossings at Walter Hill was originally approved by the Board of Commissioners back in December of 2021. The original application was for a total of 126 units, and you can see the breakdown on your packets, on your iPads there. Between single family and then 2 and 3 bedroom townhomes. The total number again was 126, which is a gross density of 3.43 units an acre. The Planning Commission did approve a preliminary plan for the detached single family product back in July of 2022. The applicant was preparing to submit a site plan for the townhome element, but was proposing changes that staff felt rose to the level of a major modification as defined by Chapter 9 of our zoning ordinance, which states modification of bulk, height restrictions, or any other development regulation expressed in the regulating pattern book. Specifically, what they're looking to change is the number of 2 and 3 bedrooms. They want to change those to 3 and 4 bedroom townhomes, which does increase the number of bedrooms total. They were also showing in their original application 4 and 6 unit buildings. However, they were changing that to 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 unit buildings, which did result in a decrease in buildings, but the number of units did remain the same. And then finally, they were proposing to increase the minimum size of those townhomes. You can see the proposed breakdown in the units on the table again on your staff comments on the iPads. 68 three-bedroom townhomes, 32 four-bedroom, and the amount of single-family detached stays the same. All of these units are going to have 4 parking spaces in the driveway. All townhome units will also have 2-car garages and will be a minimum of 75% masonry product. Most of this application is not changing from what was originally approved from 2021's application, including the 1.75 acre commercial area. I will say that we have had some discussions with the applicant regarding just a couple of things Mike and I were actually discussing today. The townhome breakdown on this page, as you can see, and the applicant is aware of this. He actually brought up the same time I did to him. It says 32 three-bedroom and 68 four-bedroom. That's actually reversed. It's shown correctly on the map, but it's incorrect there. They realize that. They're going to change that. Also, when you do the count of the number of units, we're actually getting an extra 3-bedroom townhome. Yes, and they need to fix that in the legend as well. There's also an extra 3-bedroom townhome. The applicant stated that they didn't catch that, but they said the numbers that they have are accurate, so they will remove that extra townhome, the 3-bedroom townhome unit, have it 68 instead of 69. And then the last thing we talked about was the possibility of adding a little bit of additional parking along, I guess that would be right along 231, the possibility of moving the kiosk and then providing like a double loaded area right there where Mike's highlighting, and then also one over in that area on the cul-de-sac near the Black Family Cemetery. With that, the applicant is present. The traffic improvements and things that were discussed originally for Central Valley Road and Highway 231 Lebanon Pike, nothing is changing there. That's going to remain the same as was originally proposed. So again, no changes to that. The biggest changes again are the number of bedrooms in each townhome unit, their size, and the makeups of the buildings. So those are the primary changes that they are asking for tonight. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions, comments for Mr. Mossy? Mr. Gooch?
Just a curiosity, Mr. Chairman. On page, I guess, 9, this page here, it says public roads and then private roads. What's the difference between?
Well, the public roads are going to be the ones maintained by the county. The private roads are through that townhome area there along Central Valley Road. They'll still be designed to county specifications, but we will not be maintaining those. That'll be maintained internally by the HOA for that area.
Other questions? Commissioner Averwater?
Doug, is there something in this map calling out the cemetery, as I recall, that was along Shelbyville Pike, to make sure that that's preserved?
Lebanon Pike, did you mean?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mike's got it highlighted. It's actually not on their property. It's an adjacent property, but they are showing an open space around that and a small parking area to preserve access to it.
Anyone else? Not, would you like, or the applicant to come forward at this time?
Chairman, Reed, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. I don't have any formal presentation tonight, but if you have any specific questions that I might be able to answer, I'd be glad to. I'm also accompanied by Nick Gerald from Huddleston Steel as well, if you have any questions specifically about the engineering or the step system.
Clyde, I had one thing I wanted to point out. Originally, there was a 20-foot drainage easement along this, I guess, western edge, where it was going to pick up runoff from the single family and the step field, and then take it to this pond, but I didn't see it on the book here. Is that still going to be there? Yes.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and label that, Mike. It's along the back of the western edge. Yes, sir.
Clyde, let me ask you a question. This development, to me, just appears to be begging for rental units. What's to prevent a developer from not selling all of these units, but to rent all these units? And the reason I'm asking is because Rutherford County Commission is getting more and more feedback from people out in the county about residential developments turning into rental developments. And I'm just asking that question. Is there any formal plans as it relates to sell these units to investors or development companies and have them be rented out?
And that's a great question, Jeff. Let's see what Ian has.
Enoch Jarrell with Huddleston Steel, also have Tyler Voss. Georgia Capital is the developer, and their sister company, Parent Homes, will be building these, and they are built for sale. They are not going to in the rental business. They are built for sale, and even though we have some private, some public, it'll be a horizontal property regime, and these will be for sale units. They're not planning on selling these to anyone or keeping them for rental themselves.
Anything in the bylaws that you could do to restrict rentals?
Yeah, I don't know. They'll have to put together a declaration to go through a lot of stuff with that, but I don't know how they handle that, Tyler. I don't know, that's, how they do that, but they are building, units around Middle Tennessee area, and everything they do are for sale units.
Doug, Mr. Chairman, will this go back before the full commission?
Yes, sir.
It'll go back before the full commission?
Yes, sir.
You guys probably need to be prepared to answer that at the full commission. And if no one else answers it, this commissioner will. Okay? We need to begin to address rental units and residential developments.
I will make a suggestion along that lines, Commissioner Phillips, that there is a clause that you can put into the HOA covenants and restrictions that would require a person to live in a unit for 2 years or whatever, some other number, but 2 years seems to be a good one, before they would be allowed to use it as a rental unit. And that eliminates the big national companies from coming in and taking over a whole neighborhood. There would need to be exceptions for military that gets transferred in and out, and job transfers and that sort of thing. But I think generally, for people that truly intend to come back and live there again, but I think that it's a pretty effective amendment that's doable.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde.
Little more information, if I may, Chairman. We, as Doug mentioned, we were concerned with the parking of this development, and to put apples to apples, with the increase in the number of bedrooms, it equates to, I think, 48 new bedrooms. Same number of units, but they've changed up. They've gone from 2 and 3 bedroom units to 3 and 4 bedroom units. So you've got 48 more bedrooms, which to me says more parking. But anyway, and looking at the distribution of the guest parking, there's a few spots up here, and then the majority of the spots are in the private road section. So like Doug mentioned before the meeting, we looked for additional ways to add more parking in this area with the townhomes on the public street. And they are going to look at adding more spots over here and possibly over here as well to give some of that overflow parking. And then last week we met with Enoch Jarrell and talked to him about the driveway spacing and lengths, I should say. They're going to have, I believe, at least 35 or 36 feet, I think, from the right-of-way to the face of the building, and 16 feet wide, which is a little narrow to me, but that's me and my big truck. But that should be enough to squeeze in possibly 4 per driveway. And then all of these are going to be 2-bedroom units, 2 garage units. So if you don't put a whole bunch of stuff in your garage, you can park in there as well, but I don't count on that, since most people don't use garages for parking these days. So they've moved the buildings back to get at least 35 or 36 feet from the face of the building to the right-of-way. And then also, we've asked them to extend the sidewalk across this side of Fork Line Road. They didn't have a sidewalk on this side, and just to help with pedestrian circulation, we asked them to do that, and they agreed to do that. So just to recap, compare apples to apples, this proposed amendment is adding, I think, 48 bedrooms. Same number of units, but more bedrooms. Right now, they've got the same number of guest parking spots, I believe, is what they had previously. So that's just something to consider.
Any other questions or discussion among the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, it's me again. I have a question for Mike. You said 36 feet from right-of-way to the front of the garage.
Yeah.
Now, where is the sidewalk in relation to that? Because I guess what I'm getting in, if they park 2 cars deep, and then is the back of the car going to block the sidewalk and then force people out into the street to go around?
If you park your pickup truck and I pull in right behind you, we're probably going to be into the sidewalk a little bit. So here's an exhibit of what they're proposing. This is it. This is the one. Yeah, this is it. So this is 36 feet from the face of the building to the right-of-way, 4 more feet to the edge of the 5-foot sidewalk. So they've got 40 feet. You can get 2 trucks in there, maybe, if you don't have a trailer hitch or anything out, it's sticking out. But so this is what they're proposing. The single family, I believe they're 40 feet from the front of the garage, not the front setback. The front setback's at 35, so the front door or, the extension of non-garage part of the house can come out a few more feet, but they should have 40 feet from the face of the garage to the right-of-way, and then 4 more feet before you get to the sidewalk. So, like I said, they've been working with us. It's just, we'd like to see some more guest parking in this townhome area on the private streets, and they said they could look at that and work with us on that.
Mr. Chair, Mike and Doug, 2 things. I believe that these HOA rules, and we haven't talked about it, but I believe we are discouraging, obviously, parking in the public street, right? That's a given. And you just mentioned about the question that was brought up about 2 cars or 4 cars. I believe a police officer will give you a citation if you are blocking a sidewalk with your vehicle. If your rear end is blocking the sidewalk.
I would say you probably would be.
Yeah.
So this is something that they'll have to address in their pattern book, because I think the original pattern book showed 40 feet to the curb. And we asked them that, said, in reality, this was only going to be 27 feet to the right-of-way and another 13 feet from the right-of-way to the curb. So to get 4 cars in there, you'd be parking in the right-of-way. So they agreed to move those buildings back and add some more length to the driveways, and they have done that. So, but they definitely, that'll eat into their step field a little bit. So, but I think they've got it working right now. They're still working with CUD, on placing of the step tanks and the meters and all that stuff. So that'll come up on with the site plan.
Okay, so I think you mentioned earlier that you and the engineer have discussed the need for additional parking.
Yes.
And they're going to try and squeeze some additional parking.
Yes, sir. You've got an opportunity here. You can do some parking here, move the kiosk down to this end of the parking and pick up a few spots here. You've got this, you could move this parking lot over and pick up more spots on this side.
Right.
So there's opportunities to pick up more spots.
Have they been open to that discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
And these have 2-car garages, correct?
I think every one of them has 2 car
That's
garages.
correct. It is.
So you get a total of 6 if you're,
Well, yes.
You have
And
small-
In a perfect
mention-
world, yeah.
I'll mention again, the U.S. Department of Energy, I believe, did a study that said that 75% of the single-family homes with 2-car garages, you could not park a car in them. You could maybe get one in like 25% of the total. So most people use a garage to put stuff in these days.
yeah. They're stuffages, they're not garages.
Right. But it is available if you don't collect a lot of stuff.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I may be asking the question to the wrong person, but are we increasing the size of the townhomes or are we decreasing the size of the bedrooms to go from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4? I remember a few years ago we've added on to a couple of football stadiums maybe in the state, and the stadium's no bigger, but there's a few thousand more seats, which means the backsides don't fit the seats anymore. So are these bedrooms just getting smaller?
No, and I don't know about the size of individual bedrooms, but I can say the original application showed a minimum of 1,100 square feet for 2-bedroom townhomes and 1,200 square feet for 3-bedroom. They are asking for 1,800 square feet for both the 3 and 4 bedrooms, so the units themselves are getting larger.
This is the current plan on the screen, the pattern book. That helps. So they had 4 unit buildings along this public street and a mix of units on the private streets.
If I could ask one more question, Mr. Chairman, before we get into our public hearing, and I might need some input from our county attorney. The thought process about rental units, is that something that staff could recommend? Do we have any legal standing as it relates to HOA bylaws up front? Mr. Christensen, do we have any input in that at all?
I don't want to give away all of our secrets because we want the developer to go ahead and put them in his bylaws, don't we? But I'm not so sure that we can condition approval of this on the condition that the bylaws include a provision of a restraint on leasing these units. People have an unalienable right to property within reasonable restrictions, obviously, and one thing to consider, Commissioner, is say we did do that and say the developer obliged, at some point, theoretically, the bylaws could be amended anyway by the private parties there. So, Doug, have we ever seen it on a map before, on a plat or on a PUD where we required it, to your knowledge? I mean, a PUD
For
might be
that kind of a
different.
provision, no, I mean, typically, the only thing we require HOAs for is for maintenance of, stormwater, ditches, ponds, things like that. The kiosk area is another good example. As far as putting something in there about rental versus home ownership, that would be difficult to do. I mean, I think we'd need to look into that.
It's almost like a pseudo moratorium on rental units, which you get into some sticky stuff when you're dealing with outright prohibitions and picking and choosing which developments we're wanting to not be rental as opposed to others.
And just looking at it from a practical standpoint, looking at enforcement, and Nick kind of was getting to that just a moment ago. If those bylaws were ever changed, A, we would never know, and B, even if they weren't changed, we're not in any kind of position to be able to enforce something like that. How are we supposed to know someone is or isn't renting a unit? It'd be difficult for us to enforce something like that if it were actually in the pattern book. So just something to think about.
I know that there are bylaws that are put into place, HOA bylaws that are put into place that says no rental units. I know that happens. So what you're saying is that we can't influence that. As a planning commission, as a county government, we cannot influence that.
My knee-jerk reaction is that's a correct statement, because one thing that immediately comes to mind is, the jurisdiction of this body is generally bound by your zoning ordinance and what you're looking at, and in your subdivision regulations, obviously. But if the property is zoned residential, there's nothing in our zoning ordinance that I'm aware of, Doug, or subdivision regulations that say that we can place certain restraints on the ability to lease these units. So, to answer your question, yeah, I think that's a correct statement, sir.
If I may play the devil's advocate, well then, would that not allow someone to build a whole neighborhood to get around the apartment zonings and instead call them townhomes, and one person buy up the whole development and turn them into rental units, and they've got the same thing? So
that's probably true too. I guess the only rub I'm seeing is these are properties that are owned by private parties, and how they want to dictate the ability of the owners that are part of the HOA and how they're allowed to use their property as an agreement to be struck between the owners of the property, and I don't think necessarily is permissible for this governing body to dictate on the front end. But if I'm happy to go look and see if we can do it. I'm not aware of a state law that would allow us to impose basically a contractual obligation amongst property owners as a condition for approval of a plat or a PUD.
And I'll add on to that just at least from the planning standpoint, that, I mean, this isn't an issue that we're only dealing with. I mean, there's a lot of, know people in several different states, colleagues that work around the country that, I mean, they're struggling with this just as much as we are. And there's not an easy answer to it. There's really not. I mean, I like your idea, honestly, Jim, what you were talking about. But I agree with Nick as far as, do we have any kind of a legal standing to actually require that? I think that's questionable. I think, need to look into that a little bit more.
Well, here again, if someone's applying as a PUD, we have a very wide range of asks that we can do. I mean, we could essentially just say we're just not going to approve the PUD. You got to come back as something else, and I mean, isn't that true with PUD? We have very wide flexibility of what we're allowed to do.
And we do. It's not absolute, but we do have wide range of things that we can and can't consider or require as part of conditions, yes. But we don't want to run afoul of any fair housing laws or anything like that at the same time. So we do have to keep that in the back of our minds as we're looking at this issue. But I agree, it's a pickle. I'll be the first to admit it. So.
And just to add a little more flavor to it, so there are there are constitutional rights to property without the right to property with due process of law, right? And so in the instance where we were to require that there be a note on the PUD that a person who lives in this subdivision is not allowed to sell their property, one could argue that property owner didn't have the ability to say their piece and have their due process to rebut or debate that restriction on their unalienable right to sell or lease their property. So it's an interesting topic. If it's something that you all want me to look into formally, I'm happy to do that. I would note that at least with respect to this property, it's already been approved. The PUD's already been approved. This is just an amendment to it. But it is a fascinating topic. I mean, me and Doug and Commissioner Phillips, we've talked about this for a long time.
Other comments? If not, we'll move into public comments. And at this time, we'll make this time the official public comments period. You have 3 minutes to come forward. If anyone has any thing they'd like to say, either for or against this development, we ask that you come forward at this time. Give us your name and address, and we ask you come forward at this time. Seeing no one, I'll close the comment period and return it back to the commissioners and our director.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve this. No one's here to speak against it. It looks like a reasonable plan. Staff looks like they have approved it. So I say move forward. Subject to staff approval, yes.
Have a motion to approve it with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have the second. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? It is approved. Moving now down to item 3, John Brothers, location 6605 Miller Road. Commissioner on District 6 is Jonathan Beverly. Size of site is approximately 20 acres, approximately 15 acres to be rezoned. Tax map 156, parcel 46. Existing zoning, residential medium density, RM. Proposed zoning, employment and activity center. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This request comes primarily because of a zoning enforcement action. The applicant has been using a portion of this property as a storage area, and you look at the aerial photography, you can see that on your agenda, on your iPads, or I know Mike will bring up some maps to show that. We have been working with the applicant over the course of the last several months to clean up this property. We did have a meeting prior to this application being submitted with the applicant and advised them that, you know, this was never approved for any kind of outdoor storage and that it needed to be cleaned up. That, you know, we're willing to look at a zoning application, but obviously, even if this is zoned, there's going to have to be steps taken where a lot of that stuff's taken off the property, or improvements are going to be made to the site to actually bring it up to conformance with county regulations. There wasn't much of a concept plan that was submitted with this particular application. Access will be along Miller Road, obviously. The current activity on this property indicates the primary access would be on that north-south segment of Miller Road. You can see on the map that there's a little piece of the property that kind of goes to the south there. That a portion of that's part of that mulch facility located on the corner. And so far, the applicant hasn't indicated any kind of an access onto the the east-west portion of Miller Road on the south portion of the site. It's all going to be pretty much right there on that part of the property. Most of the surrounding property is already zoned commercial, but there is they would have to do some buffering along property lines that. Buffering along would not be required because most of that area is zoned for commercial purposes. But certain activities such as open storage, things like that, would require buffering, and our performance standards would apply. Just looking at this, just taking that storage of that material out of the equation, if you just look at Miller Road, especially on the east side, most of it's already zoned commercially. We feel that it was only a matter of time before this part of the property also went. He's been selling off pieces of it as he's gone. So that wasn't a surprise to see that eventually this would also come in as a commercial zoning request. All that being said, with no real end user in sight at this point, we haven't required any kind of a traffic study or anything like that, but we could do that whenever a site plan was submitted and we knew what exactly was going to be used for this particular piece of property. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicant present? Yes, he is present. So with that, again, be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
Back to the aerial photo. Oh, it just left. The lower left-hand corner there is not the property we're talking about.
That's correct. That's an existing landscaping business.
Just the trucks and stuff up on the
correct.
top end.
That property there. Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
Questions or comments? If there are none, I'll ask that the applicant come forward this time. Just give us your name, please.
My name, excuse me, my name is John Brothers.
Might want to tell us exactly what you have in mind here, or?
Yes, sir, we were, as mentioned, the property surrounding it is already zoned commercial, and we were requesting a rezoning, and our planned use would be to store, park trucks, trailers, and maybe RVs, just a open storage unit. We've not proposed any buildings at this particular time, just strictly open storage with no structures, no permanent structures.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Mossy.
Thank you. As we discussed during our pre-application meeting, you understand that even if this is zoned, what's out there right now is going to have to be cleaned up and brought up to county standards. In other words, we have to see a site plan, even for truck and material storage. There may have to be some buffering and those kind of things. So just want to make sure you understand that. Okay.
Mr. Brothers, are these your own vehicles, personal vehicles, or business vehicles, or do you plan to allow other people to park their vehicles on your property?
Well, currently they're my own personal owned vehicles, and but with the proper zoning, then I would be willing to, as I've requested storage, being able to store, then I would consider that as well. If they're, if the community showed an interest or a need for that.
I got a question just for my clarification on this as far as what all is required to park a RV or a truck in terms of the asphalt. If you're not doing a permanent building, are you planning on putting concrete down or asphalt down, or what's required, Doug, in a situation like this?
Well, we'd have to know exactly what it is he's what he's trying to do. We'd make a determination at that point. At the very least, the maneuvering areas would have to be paved. Sometimes when it comes to storage or just, if it's just material, we won't require material to be paved necessarily underneath, but the drive aisles and things would have to be. We just have to see what he comes back with.
Anything else? If not, thank you, Mr. Brothers. We'll now go into public comments, so I'll open the public comment period open. Anyone would like to come forward, we ask you to come forward and give us your name and address at this time. Give your name and address right over here. Just that mic to whatever works for you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Carol Williams. I live at 9150 Lynch Hill Road with my husband, Jim. We travel this section of Miller Road frequently since it is the entrance to our neighborhood. It's adjacent to Buchanan Road, which is, of course, access to I-24, and to Sledge Road, where the new school is. As you, I hope, know, this property has been used for some time as what I call a junkyard for salvage mobile homes, unlicensed vehicles, boats, dumpsters. I've seen piles of tires and other discarded material. Aside from this property being unsightly, it has the potential of reducing or decreasing our property values by up to 10%. And that is a statistic I got from the Appraisal Institute. I've read the zoning regulations for Employment Activity Center, which is what this gentleman is requesting, and I don't see anywhere that storage of salvaged material is allowed in this usage. We are respectfully asking that storage of salvaged material be prohibited at any place on this property if this zoning application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let our secretary have your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Kelly McCaslin, and I live with my husband and my 2 children at 9696 Lynch Hill Road. And I just wanted to come out tonight to, I guess, offer a complaint about what it looks like. As Carol and Jim, I come past this piece of property all the time, bringing my children back and forth to school and to church and all of our activities. So when I'm embarrassed to say that when I give directions to our friends and family to get to our home, I say, come past the junkyard. That's how I give directions to get there, because as y'all say, it's storage. I prefer to call it junkyard. Obviously, it's very ugly. I don't think it's good for the environment to be sitting out there on the soil, all the things that are being stored there. As Ms. Carroll said, that I believe it has the potential to bring our property value down out in the Christiana community. I don't know where Mr. Brothers lives. I'm guessing it's not out there, because I don't think he would want that in his backyard, as it has become in our backyard. And lastly, I'm honestly waiting for the homeless community to realize what a ripe opportunity they have to enjoy this new encampment that has been created out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You may want to pull that up, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Patrick McMurtray. I live at 9200 Lynch Hill Road with my wife and 8-year-old little boy. First, and I won't repeat what they said, but what Carol and Kelly said are absolutely true. This is a gateway to our community. It's how most of us get to our homes. It's so much easier than going down 231. You literally get off that exit. Yes, the area is zoned primarily commercial, but to imply that it's all the same is simply not true. The rest of it there, you're seeing, I think as with the rest of the county, you're seeing like the concerns with the rental properties, you're seeing a nice developed improvement throughout, even in areas like ours, even out in Christiana, and this is an eyesore as you drive in. We've always noticed it, and certainly I think as Kelly said, it's an odd collection of things that do not appear to be where simply someone is storing their trucks. And I do not know what the buffering requirements would be, but it seems to me that it shouldn't be any different than any other storage area where you shouldn't be able to see it from the road. This simply doesn't make sense anymore. 30 years ago, we all had places like this, and the county is changing, and we ask you to realize that, and we're in opposition to that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to come forward? The applicant would like to come forward again. Is that okay, Commissioners? Forward. Let's close the public hearing at this time, and we'll let you. Well, we'll let you go ahead then. Okay, so. Yes.
I just want to address the concerns. As it's been brought to your attention, there is several items that are stored out there. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I was requesting to be able to have it rezoned to where I could formally store. And Doug mentioned that there would be regulations and ordinances that have to be brought up to standards. And I'm willing to make improvements and changes. I just want to communicate that to let you know that I'm open-minded to want a better-looking community as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you. You may, sir.
Mr. Brothers, let me make sure I'm clear as far as which property we're talking about. This is the property in question, correct?
Yes, where the trucks are.
Right. It's not the one down right there.
No,
okay.
but I'm curious. I'm just asking a question myself. If you looked at the two pictures,
yeah,
is it kind of hard to distinguish which one is an eyesore and which one isn't?
Yeah, that's my problem. But let me go back to your property and your equipment. Are all those pieces of equipment operational?
Yes, there's multiple trailers, and there's trucks. There's probably, there may be.
Keep in mind, this is a dated photograph, too. This was back in 2021, so this is not what's currently there.
Right.
So, like that, there's a red van there that is parked there now that's not operational. I don't know if it was operational in that picture or not.
Okay. But I guess long story short, the majority of the equipment you have on that site is operational. It can move. It can be transported.
Yes.
Does it move frequently, or has that been sitting there for years and years?
Well, it moves periodically, but we don't use all of the equipment on a daily or weekly basis.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Brothers. What type of business is this going to be used for?
We have a trucking business that specializes in hauling boats, oversized loads, houseboats, and large yachts.
Okay, so over the road travel.
Yes, sir.
On relocations. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. How long have you been storing your vehicles there?
I don't know the exact date. Not long before that picture was made, probably. We've owned the properties almost 19 years, 18 years, and it's sat dormant for a very long period of time. And just over the last, I'm guessing 2 or 3 or 4 years that we started parking there.
And so several years, and you're wanting to change now. Why are you changing now?
Because I was requested to make a change. I mean, as Mr. Damasi mentioned, they came to me, sent me a letter saying that our property wasn't zoned correctly, and so we're trying to go through the motions of righting the wrong.
So he was in violation?
Yes, and it's currently in violation. I think that is the reason he came in, was because we basically told him either you clean it up or you try to make a zoning application to change the zoning to something that would allow what you're doing, but then you're still going to have to clean it up. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what happens with this application. He's going to have to clean it up one way or the other. If it is rezoned, that does give us some controls as far as, again, the site improvements, site plan, those kind of things that would have to be done. But one way or another, one of the speakers said, seeing like scrap material and things out there, that's not something that's allowed even in what he's asking for. He couldn't use it as a quote unquote junkyard. That would have to be, again, whenever we see a site plan, we have to make sure that that's not what he's doing, because that's not even, he can't do that in that zone.
And on your trucking business, do you anticipate, I guess, having more vehicles there?
We have a pretty stable business that doesn't have a tremendous amount of growth. It's a very a specialty type service that we provide, which makes it very hard to grow it or expand it. Part of the reason we have more trailers than we have trucks is because of the different style of boats that we haul. Not every style boat fits the same trailer, so we have more trailers than we do trucks.
But it's not, your intention is not to have what we would call a junkyard as far as selling parts and so forth?
No, sir, not at all. Not at all.
Thank you, Mr. Brothers.
Thank you, sir.
I'm closing the public hearing. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to the discussion before I just want to read this portion from the zoning ordinance regarding the storage of goods, material, or other property. It is permitted, has to be permitted only in the rear of the principal building. Now, he doesn't have a principal building, so we'd have to work with that, unless otherwise shown and approved as part of a site plan review. Waste disposal receptacle shall be located at the rear of the principal building within an enclosure that is constructed in materials similar to the proposed building. Again, no building here, but enclosure shall be screened from public view. These are things that, again, we'll have to work with him on, but there are some regulations in our zoning ordinance that do deal with outdoor storage in the EAC district and all of our commercial zones, quite frankly.
Mr. Cush?
Can you scroll down to that other property? Where's the buffer there?
When they went through their approval, I believe that portion of the property got zoned, if you remember right. There was a portion that was EAC, there was a portion that was PUD. I don't think the zoning map shows that properly. Mike, it's not, I'll have to get someone to fix that. That EAC portion on the right's that's not right, it's a PUD. But we've tried working with the applicant on that. He was supposed to install some kind of a buffer on there. Apparently that was not done. That's something we need to look into as staff.
Well, to me, that is a more horrible eyesore than the vehicles on Mr. Brothers' property. But it sounds like Mr. Brothers is willing to cooperate. He's come to this body to ask for an amendment. He's willing to do a buffer. It sounds like his next step is what, to get a site plan with the proper...
If it's rezoned, then yes, sir, that would be correct.
Rezoned, yeah. And that depends on us tonight to do that.
Right.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve, subject that he follows the correct steps and procedures to meet the county requirements for the amended PUD.
I'll second that.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Cush, second by Commissioner Whitworth. Further discussion?
If I could ask a question, Mr. Chairman, that property right now is zoned residential, and what's happening out there right now is, in essence, illegal.
That's correct.
Has he been asked to clean that up?
Yes, he has.
And will he be required to clean that up until?
Until it meets our requirements, yes, sir.
So those things should come off, and then he should submit a site plan for what he intends to do out there.
Yeah, it's all going to kind of work in tandem, as he's cleaning it up and submitting the plan. Those can work in tandem, I think.
So he wants to change the zoning, let me get this straight in my mind. He wants to change the zoning to Employee Activity Center to be able to do what he's been doing on the property.
Correct, but he also understands that what is currently out there wouldn't meet county requirements, so regardless of if this is approved tonight or not, he's going to have to make some changes to it.
So if we approve this, what he's doing out there right now has to be undone, and then he has to submit some type of site plan for this commission to approve.
That is correct. Like I said, it may not be, he may submit the site plan and then be cleaning it up all at the same time as we're reviewing the plan. It could be kind of a tandem thing. As part of his cleanup, he's improving the site and moving things so that they do meet county requirements. So I don't think it's going to be he cleans it up, he submits a site plan, then puts everything back. I think it's going to be more of we get a site plan, he starts making improvements to the site and cleaning it up as part of his development of the site, if that makes any sense.
It makes some sense, but I have heartburn as it relates to changing a piece of property from residential to something to continue to do what he's been doing, in my mind, illegally. And I have a concern about that, and I'd like to see that site plan, really would. So if he brings it back, if we approve this and he brings back a site plan, we can say we don't like the site plan, and he can't do anything with it, correct?
Well, again, a lot of it's going to depend on what he does with the property. If there's no principal building, it's just parking area, we'll just have to see what he submits, okay, when it boils right down to it. We'll just, if there's any kind of structures on the property, then yes, you will have to see that again.
We've done a number of storage units, but a lot of those storage units deal with outside parking and those kinds of things. But we have at least a concept of what's going on when we make this approval. I've got some heartburn, some concern over this right now.
Other discussion before we vote?
And I just wanted to clarify one thing, the motion that Mr. Cush made. This is not a PUD amendment. Okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mossy, what kind of, on this, if it's approved the way it's submitted, and he does have a storage area outside storage area for vehicles, what kind of buffering would the planning department require?
Well, as far as property buffering along the property line, since most of the property out there is zoned similarly, there wouldn't be any buffering requirements. Now, we probably would ask him to look at screening the area where the storage is going to be taking place. I do think we would have that discussion.
Like with vegetation?
Yeah. Sorry?
Or with like vegetation? Or
it could be vegetation, it could be a fence, it could be both. You know, we see buffering done a variety of ways. It can be through vegetation, it can be through a combination of vegetation and fencing, it could just be fencing. But we would evaluate that when we see a site plan.
But it could, buffering, what we just discussed, could be made where you really couldn't see it from the road as you're driving by?
Possibly, and location might play a part of that too. I mean, obviously, that's a pretty deep piece of property. You know, we'd probably encourage him, you know, you need to push this back toward the rear of the property where it's not as noticeable. So yeah, it may cost a little bit more to get the access drive back there, but it would be a lot less noticeable up at the road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I did have one question. Looking at it from the property owner's position, I'm hearing remove his stuff while he gets this cleaned up. If he owns a piece of equipment, it's operational and it's functional, surely we're not asking him to take that off his property.
Well, it's actually considered open storage to some extent because it's not, the property's not zoned for what he's doing with it right now. And even if he gets it zoned, that means he has to bring it up to county requirements. So he still has an issue as far as that goes. Now, that kind of gets back to what I was talking to Commissioner Phillips about. It may be kind of a combination of things. Okay, he's going to make these improvements and then move everything over. It may not be a situation where we say, this all stuff has to go, make your improvements and bring it all back. He may say, well, let me make these improvements back here, then I can push this into the back where nobody can see it behind a fence or something like that. We probably would allow to move forward in that regard.
I'd certainly hope so, because I'm going to tell you guys something. There's storage issues in this county. We just talked about this one subdivision trying to get 4 cars in a parking lot or in the garage. This gentleman, if he has to move equipment that's perfectly good, that's operating fine, and move it to another place in this county, he's going to be in violation again if that's the case. So I think we got to give a little consideration to the property owner. He's got working equipment, and we're asking him to move it to a place that's going to be illegal again. More than likely, almost, I'll just about bet you in this county, there's not a place he can put it legally. So I hope we're not asking a man to take perfectly good equipment off this site while he's trying to prep it, doing the right thing at this point in time. So,
yeah, I mean, we're willing to work with him, but we're going to have to see some effort from his side. You know, I don't want the zoning to go through 6 months later we haven't seen a site plan. I mean, he's going to have to show some good faith effort on that.
absolutely. I think that's what he's here for tonight.
Are you ready to vote? Madam Secretary, I'm going to ask you to call the roll, please.
Jim Averwater? Yes. Jeff Phillips?
No.
Mike Cush?
Yes.
Lee Bogle? Yes. Craig Gooch?
Yes.
David Jones? Yes. Marvin Whitworth?
Yes.
Jim Thompson?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. All right, we're moving now to item 4. Dani Patel, REZ 23003, location 5803 Shelbyville Pike. Commissioner, District 6, Jonathan Beverly. Size of site is approximately 1 acre. Tax map 158P, Group A, Parcel 2. Existing zoning, residential medium density. Proposed zoning, planned unit development for a restaurant and commercial use. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant would like to zone this property to planned development to allow a small restaurant on the property. The primary purpose of it is to request a reduction of the front setback, which would be 25 feet, especially along Shelbyville Pike. The building would be single-story, 2,200 square feet, and be primarily constructed of brick and ephes. There would be associated parking areas and a drive-through window with a queue lane. The applicant did conduct a neighborhood meeting in November of last year. Concerns raised by those who attended included traffic, property values, and drainage. And I will call your attention to the pattern book that is on your iPads. Mike's also showing a portion of that on the big screens. There are 2 primary access points to this property. One is along Shelbyville Pike. That's a right in and right out only. And then there is also an access point onto Ellis Drive. Ellis Drive actually lines up with an existing median cut in Shelbyville Pike, so folks leaving there can actually turn south going toward Shelbyville, or head north, of course, going back toward Murfreesboro. There were safety concerns raised about that particular access and just the way that they're handling access in general. Some of the residents asked if there were going to be any kind of a traffic signal installed at that intersection. The applicant's representative said he didn't think one would be warranted, but would be willing to do a warrants analysis to see if that were the case. And of course, if that were to happen and it were warranted, they would be responsible for bearing the cost of installing that. The applicant is proposing a 15-foot type 2 buffer with an opaque fence to satisfy the county's landscape requirements. This would be along the north and east property lines. And they're also proposing a 3-foot wide planting bed along the building foundation and parking area plantings as well. This would all have to be shown on an engineered site plan should this application be approved. Staff does feel this request is consistent with the recommendations of our comprehensive plan. While traffic is a concern, we do feel that this business will cater more toward the existing traffic in the area and wouldn't generate really any additional traffic. Those who would be using it would probably already be going up and down 231, accessing that subdivision to the back, or perhaps the gas station, C&E Market, located directly across the street. I've already discussed the warrants analysis for the signal. If one is warranted, of course, they would be responsible for installing that. Overall, we do recommend approval of this request. The applicant's representative is present and will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Commissioners? Any comments, questions? If not, applicant, representatives?
Matt Taylor of SEC, located at 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro. Doug, Mr. DeMasi did an excellent job describing the project and our neighborhood meeting. And we have, in the book, we've made that commitment at the site plan level. We would conduct a signal warrant analysis to try to alleviate those concerns. I did try to be very honest with the neighbors and let them know I do not anticipate that to be warranted, but we're willing to conduct that study just to confirm. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Questions for Mr. Taylor?
If I could ask a question that related to, this is a restaurant?
Yes, sir. It's intended to be a Subway, is what my client wants to operate here.
Okay, so really, any outside eating tables, those kinds of things, do you know?
We have not proposed any, and some of that is just purely due to space. The way that the septic soils wound up breaking out on this site, we just didn't have a lot of room for anything extra except for the building and the required parking, Commissioner.
We've had some concerns at the county commission level as it relates to noise ordinance and nuisances and those kinds of things. So no bands, no outside music, none of those kinds of things that you know of?
Correct.
More questions? Mr. Bogle?
You know if the Dollar General is still vacant across the road?
Last time I was out there, it was.
Okay, just curious.
Yes.
I knew that would affect your traffic circulation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
And if it's not, then we'll make sure we build in some kind of assumption. If there's not something in there, we'll build in some assumptions when we do our analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone like to come speak for or against? Forward now. Not seeing anyone, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move to approve with staff comments.
Have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second? Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It is approved. Old business?
No, sir, I have nothing further. Mike, do you have any?
Staff reports, other business?
Nothing at this time.
Our next meeting is January the 23rd at 9 o'clock. Evidently, folks are thinking there's a football game tonight or something. So, at this time, I'll just say we're adjourned.